and drier days outside, of course, the rain. But I'm all for the dust because apparently the more dust comes in, it reduces or slows down the threat of hurricanes, which, by the way,
where'd you get that from?
We are now in the hurricane season.
Correct.
Yes.
Started Sunday, right?
Yes, that's correct. And I got it from the, meteorological services.
Okay. Of course, I'm sitting and thinking to myself, I'm sure hurricanes don't go, yeah, well, I want to go, but hey, it's not June 1st yet. Like, it gives a crap,
Well, actually,
that's when it comes.
The Atlantic, I don't know if it's that, call it the Atlantic tropical season, because the first storm of the season did start, albeit it started on the Pacific side. I think they called it, it was an A word. I want to say it was Allen, but
A word.
I don't know precisely what it was. I'd have to look it up. But there's also, again, forecasters are looking at another area on the, I think it's the east coast of the U.S. at the moment that may drift down into our direction. I think I saw someone shared it. Honestly, I haven't opened it yet, but I think I saw it share on my WhatsApp messages earlier this afternoon, or later this afternoon, as a matter of fact, recently, within the last hour or so. So, yes, the hurricane season has begun. But again, we send up prayers to the Almighty that He will do as He always does, looks after us during the hurricane season. I think if you talk to forecasters, it's starting to sound like a bit of a broken record. Every year is going to be another active hurricane season, worse than the last season, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's kind of like become a sport. I was surprised to see that the amount of people, actually, that just really get all hyped up. And I guess they don't make it sort of like quite like a sport. Although you and I have some different definitions of sport, I might remind you.
Yes.
But
yes, you have said that.
But my point is that you can tell that they're all interested in tracking this. Exactly, maybe it just might be their own survival, but they really get into tracking this. It's like, did you hear anything with the hurricane? Is there a hurricane out? What's her name? It's like they're really into it.
Well, I think that phenomenon now in Cayman has occurred for two different reasons. On the one hand, before Hurricane Ivan, I think a great many of us would look forward to hurricane season. If for anything else, you get a few days off work, you get a long weekend, get some rain, get an excuse to, buy a 55-gallon garbage drum, not for garbage, but for ice and beer and other liquid libations. But after Hurricane Ivan, that sort of changed, I think, the mood for many of us. Certainly many Caymanians that I speak to. Now we accept that hurricanes are no joke. We accept the fact that climate change is real, and that is producing more and more stronger, if not dangerous, hurricanes. So I would dare say we now view hurricanes as locals with a degree of trepidation than perhaps we did before.
A bit more gravity.
Yeah, a bit more, exactly, a bit more gravity, a bit more seriousness. And as such, we tend to be focused this time of year. And, yes, we're listening to the National Weather Service, but we're also checking out fringe sites like Weather Underground and, a variety of YouTubers. I know one that I'm looking at now that I kind of like, Mr. Weatherman. So there's a couple that you watch and you just sort of, combine the data that you receive, and maybe that might give you a clear picture. But certainly, I think here in Cayman, and from my standpoint, I'm all for advance warning.
So I chuckle because as I hear you speaking, Mr. Harris, I'm thinking, I can see a couple of people now. Austin, I don't have one Wi-Fi link. I have two. And I get 2 cases of beer instead of one because I take this thing serious.
That's right. That's right.
This is no joke here. This could last
joke
for a long time.
It is no joke.
And buy some more canned food, right?
It is no joke. Hey, listen.
Pretty funny.
Got to have your hurricane supplies. Got to take it seriously. Was it prepared? Caymanprepared.ky is the website. If you are new to the country, I would urge you to check out the website, and it'll teach you some useful tips on surviving the June 1st Atlantic hurricane season. Things like getting your hurricane supplies. What do those hurricane supplies include? No, they're not beer. Some would say it's more of a want than a need, depending on who you ask. But it is a very useful website if you're new to the island, like I said. But also, if you're not so new to the island, it never hurt to get a bit of a refresher. because, yes, we do take hurricane season these days with a bit more serious than we did in previous years gone by.
I hear you, Mr. Harris.
And well, some of us do. Maybe Ellio doesn't.
Nah, you know, actually, I was saying to someone, I can't remember when, months, years. I'm like, listen, when I built my house, I was preparing for the hurricanes. I don't run around boarding up, and I don't do it. No.
No?
Yeah.
No.
No. It's like, listen, there's no time for that. I might say cut a bit of canned food or something.
You like to live life on the risky edge, don't you?
I don't even.
Ragged edge.
I just don't know. I don't get that. I just noticed that when hurricane season is there, it's like every time it's the same thing. The shops will be packed. You know, we're buying. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, okay. If you needed 10 sheets of plywood last year, you don't have those anymore. Like, I mean, do you really have to go to my friend Ellio Thompson again? It's like, come on.
Well, no,
I'm happy that you're shopping for Ellio Thompson. But
that part is true, and certainly the mad dash to the supermarkets. It's
like COVID in the toilet paper. I couldn't get it
on the slightest of whims, just the hint of a storm, and the stores pack up. Well, again, if you're like me and you again hate crowds, then another reason why kmanprepare.ky is useful to you. Instead of making that mad dash to the stores at the first alert being shared in the news, pick up one or two items as part of your regular shopping visits, whether it be once or twice a week.
Panic purchasing.
And then you can add these stuff as you go. And then when the announcement is made, okay, so then the only thing you need is cold beer. But otherwise, you're good. So just some tips. Yeah. And don't take our word for it. Ask the experts at the website. Of course, Cayman Prepared is either hosted or supported by Hazard Management Cayman Islands. They do a phenomenal job, and just want to send a shout out to them now while we can. So it is 38 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. Starting a bit early today, I noticed. Normally we kick it off at about 32 minutes past the hour, but we opened today 29 minutes before the half hour, so that's a good sign.
Something missing from the slot or something?
Normally there was.
Let's analyze this thing.
Well, there's no commercials, I suspect. So it's that time of the month, I guess, a bit low. Let's see if it continues. Obviously, if you want to do business with us, not that we're begging for business, but hey, we are growing. I was thrilled. We had a chance to take a look at some of our social media analytics, which I think at some future period we'll share with the listening audience. But we've seen some very respectable growth.
Not bad for a 3-month-old.
Not bad for a 3-month-old at all. And certainly for that, we want to thank you, the listening audience. The number of followers has grown consistently month on month for the last 3 months. And we're also gaining ground in terms of those who are taking advantage and listening to not just pieces of our streaming audio, which, of course, we broadcast live on 103.1 FM and your radio dial, but also simulcast live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And again, taking a look at those analytics over the weekend, we're seeing some very respectable growth in all of our areas. And again, that is entirely thanks to you,
first and foremost.
So those of you out there within the sound of our voice, if you just listen and haven't checked out our social media page, Facebook or Instagram, Straight Talk Radio Show is the keyword. Please like and follow and
share.
And share with your friends.
Spread the word.
Spread the word. And, of course, that obviously helps us to justify various expansion in services, particularly in the social media and online space, which there is much coming down the pipeline, and we look forward to presenting them as they come online. Staying with the good news. Well, first of all, the great news for those of you tuned in. Coming up at 5 o'clock, Ellio, we have a guest. Tell us about it.
Well, we definitely do have a guest, and of course, that is none other than Kenneth Bryan, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, I will say, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. He's going to be here in the studio. Should be around 5 o'clock is the set time, and we're going to be having, open discussion, lots of different topics, but want to focus primarily on airport expansion, which is something that we've been chatting a little bit about. That was one of the other projects, amongst others, that he was in the lead of. And outside of that, we hope to be able to get a little feedback from him in terms of the elections, how it went, what he thinks about the present landscape, and kind of maybe little teasers about what the future might look like.
Yes.
So it should be a good discussion. Hope you're going to join us, and hopefully you'll text a friend, call a friend, tell them to listen to 103.1 to their favorite talk show, Straight Talk, and let them know Mr. Kenneth Bryan is going to be on. And we're going to be getting some other guests here on the studio as well, and I think I did mention some of those, but again, I will keep it for now. We want to see we have guests like Mr. Manderson that has agreed to come on the program, the Dr. Livingston from the UCCI, and a host of others. And we want to thank all those other persons who have been joining us as well. I think the last one was none other than Mr. Nick Joseph.
Yes.
And that was a total awesome discussion. It's been too busy for us to dissect some of what he said, but I think we can probably start doing that tomorrow.
No, absolutely. Great conversation, and it just encourages us to get him back in the studios to share more of his thoughts and viewpoints on what the immigration reform may look like as things start to take greater shape and more announcements are given and shared in the public domain by our elected leaders. Of course, Friday, you will recall, those of you who tuned in rather than going to happy hour know that the government also made another announcement as it relates to immigration reform, this time on the private sector side, and that is Minister Michael Miles calling for the creation of a national workforce database to get this information, digitally and added to the list of resources available to the government so that we can help improve the employment situation, to better deal with the work permit board situation when we are obviously deciding who should get a work permit versus or as compared to whether there are qualified companions available in the various respective spaces. As we mentioned on Friday, not necessarily a new idea, but it is great to see the government, the National Coalition for Caymanians, following through on good ideas from previous administrations that deal with immigration reform. I think that is very encouraging. Like the Jobs for Caymanians only took 13 years to make it happen, but they say progress is slow.
But the wheels grind excessively fine, something to that effect. But I do have I've been doing a little bit of research, and one of the discussions I would like to have, and I mentioned this I think last week, is a little bit of a focus on the rollover and whether we're getting from the rollover exactly what we should be getting.
Right.
And also, what are some of the unintended consequences of the rollover? And I'm hoping that I can, amongst other things, recap a little bit of Mr. Nick Joseph's conversation and perhaps start that discussion. And this, of course, is not to be against or slight the government in any way at all. We do appreciate all that they're doing. You're talking about the implementation of the rollover as it occurs to occur in the civil service.
Right.
But I have a little bit of a take on it, Mr. Harris.
Do you know?
Yes, I do. You gotta twist this thing, turn around, look from it upside down, whatever it takes, and say, is this really the right direction we want to go? And I have some interesting thoughts. I'm dying to share it.
Well, things always get interesting when Ellio Solomon says he has thoughts.
I have thoughts
on the
about
subject, and he's anxious to share it. So
yeah.
We're looking forward to hearing those thoughts. Got a comment coming from WhatsApp already. It says, glad you mentioned your 3-month existence. Until you guys started your conversation on the airport expansion, I didn't even know you guys were back on the air. So you can add one more loyal listener to your program now going forward.
Awesome.
So, again, grateful to you, the listening audience, for obviously making the choice.
Spread the word.
Yes, absolutely. Making the choice to tune into Straight Talk every weekday from 4:30 to 6:30 every day. And yes, absolutely, please do spread the word to your friends and families that we are on the air. And by all means, you can.
There's a little bit of evidence that there are new people joining us every day.
Quite right.
The family continues to grow.
The family continues to grow indeed. You can be a part of the conversation by calling in 745-2626, or you can take advantage of our WhatsApp number at 928-2562. And from there, you can either leave us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message.
We will stress that everything that we get in terms of those text remains confidential.
100%. Yes, that's a very good point. As a matter of fact, I reiterated this to a contributor just last week, as we were obviously talking about the airport expansion project, and I said to the individual, I guess cutting them off at the pass sort of thing, saying, by the way, this correspondence is all maintained in absolute confidence unless, of course, you tell me otherwise.
Right.
So if the writers choose to be identified, then and only then will we obviously acquiesce to the contributor's request and share details. But other than that, also to my colleague's point, in addition to maintaining our listeners' confidentiality or anonymity, we certainly do strive to read and play all of the messages that are received to the program during the program before we take it off the air. Before we receive our 5 o'clock guest and sticking with the good news, I think the biggest of the good news category is Cayman gets ready for the second round of the World Cup qualifiers. This month in the CONCACAF 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers, Cayman will play in the Group 2 or the Round 2 of this qualifier.
When is the World Cup?
The fact, next year, I believe.
Sheesh.
Yeah. I believe it's next year, 2026, yeah, I think.
Big soccer fans in here.
I tell you that, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I think it's next year.
I bet it was some American world football you'd probably know higher.
Well, yeah, that starts preseason begins in August, and the next season for 2025 starts in September. I can tell you all about that. Let's see, World Cup. World Cup begins, let's see, when is the next, it's 2026. So the tournament will take place June 11th through the 19th, 2026, and will be jointly hosted by 16 cities in 3 North American countries. The main host country of the matches is the United States, while Canada and Mexico will be the auxiliary hosts. So that's World Cup 2026.
Should be exciting. Same time zone.
Yes.
That helps.
Yes, that does help. You're exactly right. We don't have to wake up at dark 30 to watch these games or stay up really late at night.
Yeah.
Which I remember one year, because I remember all the years. I watch every World Cup. Whilst I may not be glued to the TV every Sunday morning for English Premier League or, the Italia League and whatnot,
once every 4 years.
Every 4 years, I will watch almost every match. Almost every match. And I've enjoyed it from whether it be, airing at lunchtime, which is always great for us, and businesses here in Cayman can benefit from it. Though businesses in Cayman have opened, particularly the pubs, have opened up in the really early morning hours. I think of a few, which we won't name, but they have been faithful in presenting World Cup games. And even when it was played, when they aired like late night, like past normal closing times, there was some exemptions allowed to establishments remaining open past the. Of course.
As it should.
As it should. It's
the World Cup.
It is the World Cup. Exactly.
I'll never forget.
Do I need to say any more?
I'll never forget I was in Honduras once, and we went to San Pedro. I was excited. But either way, I was coming out of one of these little fast food restaurants, and then all of a sudden I hear, I'm like, what the world is going on? There in the middle of the street was a little TV, and everybody was around watching the World Cup. I'm like, wow, this is exciting.
Listen, man, you haven't watched football until you've had a Latin commentator.
That's right, man.
That is how you know it is an exciting game.
Basta que Raúl está moviendo con la bola. Gol!
There it is. That's very good.
Gol!
There it is. Yes.
Hold on.
The very hyper and extended excitement of goal.
Yeah, I can't quite match it, but you get the idea. The polar
opposite of what would happen in golf, where golf is much more of a whisper. Yeah. Not that in football, and certainly not that at World Cup.
How do you do a golf one anyway? Be like,
well, there he is, pulling up at the third hole. It's a very short putt, but it's not straight. So he's going to knock it.
Hey, I'll say you saw it.
And, missed it just by a hair.
You did that pretty good.
Probably the only time you will the Group A qualifying matches. And then the World Cup qualifiers move here, back home to Cayman on June 7th as we take on group leaders Honduras at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex. So for those of you who are going to fly to Bermuda, you lucky devils, for the rest of us, hopefully we'll be able to grab some tickets for the matchup at Truman Bodden Sports Complex. And I was just checking online for that earlier, and apparently Eventpro will be the site that will be selling tickets for the June 7th matchup at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex, encouraging all who can and are able to come out and support our local boys as they potentially make history again. We made history the first time by obviously qualifying past and out of the first round. This time is for the first time ever. Now we're in the second round. Could we make it? Could lightning strike twice and we find our way into the semis? Wouldn't that be lovely? So that is the prayer, and that is the good news for today as we prepare for World Cup qualifiers. Again, matchups beginning this month, starting on Thursday, the 5th of June, and then on June 7th here at home at the Truman Bodden.
So let's play this one. I don't know what we're going to get, Austin, but let's try it, right?
Yeah, that's the American commentator.
This English versus Spanish. Yeah, that sounds about it, yeah.
That is how you commentate for a football match. That is how you do it.
Oh, boy, let me tell you. That's exciting.
How you do. Look at that. I got goosebumps just listening to that.
Excited, yeah?
I'm telling you, man, that is how football is supposed to be watched.
Yeah.
So the World Cup qualifiers continue this month, and ahead of the World Cup for next year, June, again, let me get that right.
June 11th, I think you said.
Yeah, I think that's what I said.
Yeah. I'm listening to you, Austin. Someone's paying attention to you, Austin.
Someone's paying attention. Yeah, June 11th to the 19th. Thank you very much. June 11th or June 11th to July 19th. So it's a whole month of activities. 16 cities.
16 cities, that's what it was.
16 cities in 3 North American countries. The main country is the U.S., with Canada and Mexico being auxiliary hosts, whatever that means. I guess if the weather's not good, or if the end of the world happens in one of the nations of the U.S., or Trump decides to
as long as Canada and America doesn't go to war.
You still can go to Canada and Mexico.
Yeah,
that's right.
As long as America and Canada doesn't go to war.
That's right. That's right. Or there's an acquisition of land as planned.
That could be a moment for the acquisition.
Another bit of good news, and this from our own roadways. The National Road Safety Committee to improve safety are expected to improve road safety following the recent spat of collisions between cyclists and motorists, one of which proved to be fatal. Apparently, following a meeting earlier this month between the National Road Safety Committee and the association Cayman Cycling, authorities said they were committed to improving road conditions for all users and implementing many of the suggestions coming from the Cayman Cycling Organization. These include adding cyclist detection signs on the roads, warning drivers to be on the lookout for cyclists in the area, updating the road code with the emphasis on the whole shared road usage, which is, as we talked about before, new road design is sort of taking on.
Yeah, I've stopped cycling. Yeah.
You've stopped cycling, yeah. New road design has taken on a form of the total roads or total usage to incorporate both pedestrians, cyclists, and, of course, vehicular traffic. They also mentioned launching something called a regular family micro-mobility day, where sections of roads will be closed off to traffic for use by cyclists and pedestrians, kind of like that, ditch your car for a day event that was held a few years ago. This might come back, and we have one day every month or one day every quarter where, again, we cut off the roads to vehicular traffic, and you can only access it if you're riding a bike or having a bit of a walk. So I think these are all good. The Ministry of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, and Housing, as well as Infrastructure, led by the Honorable Jay Ebanks, has promised to lead the drafting of updates to the road code, as well as working with Cayman Cycling on educational campaigns in schools and public safety. The ministry will also be drafting a report comparing sentencing for road deaths in the Cayman Islands as it compares with other nations, perhaps with the view of further enhancing the penal code, and also pledged to support police traffic enforcement, including public safety campaigns. So I think those are all good things, good news.
Speaking of good news, now I know you might not get out east as much as I do, Austin.
Unfortunately, I do not.
I have to take one trip a day, right? And it's costing me. But either way,
gas stations love you.
Speaking of,
That's why you don't drive a V8.
I $800 a month thing just for the trips. That's why you need to move out there.
Well,
but either way,
say, don't remind me. Jeez.
Speaking of Minister J, I note that he's building something new in the front of the north side. He's got the little triangle things going on there, so that when you're coming out of north side and you want to make the left turn going east, you want to go straight, make a right turn, the person's work coming in. You got building the little islands there.
Oh, really?
There's 3 little islands being built. I'm assuming he's behind it. I know it's not you and I.
Well, if not, it might be a surprise for some folks that they might need a permit for that. Well, that's encouraging, I guess.
It's gonna be nice. I can see it's gonna be beautiful. I'm pretty sure they're gonna plant some, flowers and whatever there. It should be nice.
Well, maybe they
look for it.
I look for it indeed. Interesting. They're going back the island route because you remember we, sort of had the project, the pilot project of little islands along 7 Mile Beach Road a few years ago, particularly the coastal road where they had, again, these pedestrian islands, presumably to protect pedestrians when they cross the street, so they have some bit of a bastion of safety,
I can think of the campaign marketing for that. You could say, Jay brings the islands back.
Jay brings, maybe, indeed. Well, those are the bits of good news for you. And as we try to do every day before we get into our substantive discussions, we try to bring a bit of good news so you have, again, something to smile about before perhaps you start to have that frown on your eye for the more serious topics, which we are going to get to when we come back from this next break as we go off to the top of the hour news brought to you by our news partner, the BBC. At 58 minutes, soon to be 59 minutes past the hour. 4 o'clock is the time. Do keep it locked. The phone lines will be open at 745-2626. Coming up, when we return, our special guest in studios, the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, helping us engage the conversation of the airport expansion projects. Keep it locked. Straight Talk continues next.
Bobo.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands. Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Govinda Gill with the BBC News. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said he expects President Trump to take strong steps and impose further sanctions after a second round of direct talks between Ukraine and Russia in Turkey failed to result in a ceasefire. At the meeting in Istanbul, Moscow presented a list of demands known to be unacceptable to Kyiv. The UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric urged for an end of hostilities.
We hope that the talks that concluded in Istanbul could lead to a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire as the first step towards a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace in line with UN Charter, international law, and relevant UN resolutions.
The human rights chief, Volker Turk, has denounced the new American and Israeli-run aid delivery system in southern Gaza, saying it's heartbreaking and shows utter disregard for civilians. He said Palestinians who'd been desperate for food and medicine for almost 3 months were being made to run for the aid in desperate circumstances. On Sunday, dozens of Palestinians were shot dead near one of the distribution points. Survivors blamed Israeli troops, though Israel denied responsibility. Mr. Turk also said the Israelis were committing ethnic cleansing.
Ethnic cleansing means that you essentially displace forcibly a population into areas where they can hardly survive. That's what's happening as we see it. And you have 20 months of warfare. You have an extremely exhausted population. You have emaciated children. You have now conditions of life that are increasingly incompatible with the continued existence as a group in Gaza.
The Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, says he'll call for a parliamentary vote of confidence in his coalition government after his ally, Rafał Trzaskowski, narrowly failed to win the presidency. Sunday's election was won by the Conservative historian Karol Nawrocki, who's supported by the opposition Law and Justice Party. His victory has been widely viewed as a blow for Mr. Tusk's government, as he'll be able to veto its legislation. Mr. Tusk said he would carry on regardless.
I would like to declare that I will not stop for a moment as Prime Minister of the Polish government in my work and in our common struggle for the Poland we dreamed of at the beginning of our independence, a free, sovereign, secure and prosperous Poland. The presidential election has not changed anything and will not change anything in this regard.
The Microsoft founder Bill Gates says improving the health and education of people in Africa will be the priority when he gives away most of his $200 billion fortune over the next 20 years. Mr. Gates urged African leaders to seek a path to prosperity. BBC News. Voting's underway in South Korea in a snap presidential election called after the impeachment of the former president, Yoon Suk-yeol. He was forced from office after a disastrous attempt to declare martial law that's left the country deeply divided. Opinion polls have put the Democratic Party leader, Lee Jae-myung, well ahead of his Conservative rival, Kim Moon-soo, whose party has been badly damaged by Mr. Yoon's actions. A leading US Democratic Senator, Jeanne Shaheen, has welcomed a promise of cooperation from the new Syrian authorities to try to locate the missing American journalist, Austin Tice. He vanished in 2012 near Damascus. Secret Service intelligence files uncovered by the BBC have confirmed that he was arrested and imprisoned by paramilitaries loyal to the Assad government. The FBI has alleged the Egyptian national who tried to set fire to members of a Jewish campaign group in Colorado had been planning the attack for a year. The agency charged Mohammed Solomon with a hate crime. The acting U.S. attorney for Colorado is J. Bishop Gruhl.
What the charges allege that he did was to throw Molotov cocktails at a group of men and women, some of them in their late 80s, burning them as they peacefully walked on a Sunday to draw attention to Israeli hostages held in Gaza.
President Trump has said Mr. Solomon must be deported. New computer simulations suggest the Milky Way may avoid a catastrophic collision with the larger Andromeda galaxy, once thought inevitable in 4.5 billion years' time. Scientists had warned such an event could destroy our solar system, with Earth and the Sun possibly drawn into a supermassive black hole at the centre of the newly combined galaxy's centre. That's the latest. BBC News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on your radio dial 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. We're your hosts, Austin Harris and Ellio Solomon.
That's it.
Yes, he was about to take a sip of his hot chocolate, so I thought, let me jump in there. Otherwise, he's going to make a mess.
So you do the announcement. When I'm ready, you do the announcement. And now I'm having a sip. You throw it on me.
I got to keep you on your toes, buddy. This is live radio.
What a friend we have in Jesus.
That's right.
What that woman say? I'm sure it's Christ time for the sinners, Austin. I'm going to get you. You know what? We're going to start switching around. I'm going to do the knobs.
Yes.
I'm going to have my fun with you, brother.
You're going to have your fun. You're going to have your way, will you? All right. Well, things to look forward to.
My way and my day.
I got to train you up and make sure you're ready for it. So that's my job. Well, welcome back, K-Man. It is 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock as we move into our substantive conversation. It is our pleasure to welcome in studios our very special guest, the deputy leader of the opposition. Apparently, I called him the leader of the opposition ahead of the 5 o'clock news. And in my defense, really, I'm just seeing the future. It's only a matter of time before he takes over the top job. In studios with us, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan. Good evening to you, Kenneth, and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Mr. Harris. I was going to make a little joke there, do a little boo-boo, but I decided not to. And Mr. Solomon.
Just a little payback, huh? You were thinking about it.
No, it's truly a pleasure to be here. I want to say hello to your listening audience. It's really a pleasure to be on the show. I can see there's going to be loads of fun already.
Oh, yeah.
They're really having a good time. They're having a party in here, folks.
Yeah, we do have fun.
There's what do you call the strobe lights?
That's right.
Disco lights, strobe lights.
Wait till the disco lights kick in. That only happens in the commercials. So if you want to see what really goes on in this room, you might have to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
There's a short John Travolta segment. That's when the disco light pops out.
And everybody knows Ellio likes to sing, but you didn't know he could dance too.
I want to see that one.
I want to sell tickets for that.
Hold on. He wants to say something. What do you?
I recall there was a time that when you were previously on another show hosting, and I think you guys could have been on together. I can't remember, but there was a challenge for you to sing off against somebody. Who was that? You remember?
That must have been. You must have been talking about me on the show with Woody or something.
Yes, that's right. And there was because Ellio has a pretty good voice, you know.
Oh, I know. Yeah. He likes them cry country songs the best though, but I heard him singing something. I didn't even want to say what he was singing earlier on, but it was very mainstream. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
You know, it could have been Taylor Swift, but I don't know. You know,
those were actually Alden McLaughlin's words.
Oh, really?
You see, Ellio, where you get them more cry songs from?
They're the best, man. They're the best.
Yeah. So I'm truly honored to be here. This is the first time, and I hope of many, many, many times together over the next few years. I really want to come on and make it a staple at least once a week to be on, because communication, as all three of us know, is very important in the line of work that I do, communicating with those we represent, and we represent everybody, voters and non-voters alike, Caymanians and non-Caymanians alike. As long as you reside here in the Cayman and you love the Cayman, you need to hear from those who sit in Parliament, and that's my job, and my role has changed since the last couple of months, but it's still important, and I take my job seriously. So I want to be here to communicate.
Well, you know, I want to jump in to say something serious, but also I got a little joke for you too, right?
Shoot.
So one is I want to show my appreciation for yourself as well, on behalf of, I'm sure, the public, because you've always been a person that's, you know, whether it's on your own personal page or jumping on the radios, I know the TV thing has kind of went away for a while, but it's back. You've always done your share, to put it lightly, to keep the public informed, and we want to really thank you for that. So the joke side is, I called now the little roundabout by the airport, the Kenneth Bryan roundabout, right? And I said one thing about this guy is that you can mark the calendar. Kenneth will tell me when it's Mother's Day. Trust me, he will. Right?
All the major holidays, Kenneth Bryan will be the one.
And I actually joked. I said, I think if I even have a problem between me and my wife, he's probably going to be the first one to inform me. Either way, thanks for keeping us informed. We really appreciate it. And I do mark a lot of things on that little board that you keep putting up there.
Yeah. How do you get around? Because everybody else was sort of told to take theirs down, but Kenneth Bryan's smiling face, as my colleague pointed out, is always there to remind us what, special holiday it is.
Well, I think I had to deal with this 4 years ago when those who didn't want to see me continue successfully with the signs challenged it.
You mean the haters of this world?
Yeah.
Haters hate. That's another word to put it. Everybody's got a job.
Yeah, they got a full cooler full of haterade.
Yes, they do.
But so basically... 9 years ago, 2017 election, I put my signs up, and I never took them down.
Right.
And nobody said anything. I was like, okay, cool.
If it ain't broke, go fix it.
Right. So I left the signs up, and I kept it positive. Positive messaging. I'm committed to communication. Is a very important part of the job. And then in 2021. Somebody said something, either 2021 or 2022, I think it was. And somebody said, well, where's your planning approval? And I said, well, you didn't need planning approval to put it up. Because I put it up during the time of the election, which you don't need planning approval, as you know.
Right.
And as a result, it was a planning board, did some research and stuff, and said, well, technically after 5 years, they can't do anything to me again.
Oh, you even grandfathered in, have you?
I've been grandfathered then. So I
see, that's how you do it. You avoid the regulations for as long as possible until you get to the point where you got squatter rights and now they can't move you. I love it. Brilliant.
I try not to abuse something that was a loophole in the law that I used to do it, right? Like, it's not like I'm not there, promoting just any old thing. I always keep it to the relevance of my job and positivity for the country. So, I'm honored that I found a loophole because I think it's necessary. I personally think we need to change the legislation to allow each member the opportunity to inform their people. So, for example, what if you can't afford the advertising on the radio or advertising in papers or online?
Or maybe they don't even want you on there.
Or whatever, whichever one.
God forbid.
Yeah, exactly, because media is getting a bit, left
personal
right now. So I think it's something good. Like, I think people appreciate my signs.
Yeah. I do.
I think the one he may be referring to now is a hurricane one. So I make sure that the day before hurricane awareness is always my sign is up, because I want people to take the weekend and go out and do shopping and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the story there. And I will always continue to do that as long as I'm elected. I think it's something that the people appreciate. So
there you go. And as you pointed out to all the haters, he's been there for 5 years now. Can't take it down, even if he wanted to. So get used to it.
There now 9 years.
There you go. Get used to it. He's part of the furniture now.
We'll soon have the Kenneth provision.
I tell you, we'll soon rename that roundabout to Kenneth Bryan.
You gotta learn.
I already call it that. That's what I call it, because
I know how to survive in this business, man. You gotta survive because not everybody's gonna be on your side. So how do you keep yourself relevant and do your job?
Well, you've done it again.
You've done it.
Well, speaking of continuity, Mr. Bryan, got to be pleased from a government perspective. Obviously, last administration, you were Deputy Premier, Minister of Tourism, and in that term, you proposed the airport expansion project, but obviously for a variety of reasons, sometimes you just run out of time. It wasn't something that you could champion during your term in office with the government, but clearly it seems to be continuing. We were chatting about it last week, the immigration white paper, which also came from the previous administration, seems to have found its way in terms of relevance in this administration, with at least 2 announcements and perhaps suggestions that some of the recommendations, including the renaming of the legislation, may also be carried forward. So I guess right out of the bat, what are your thoughts on seeing those ideas continued one administration after the next?
Well, first off, I think my natural reaction to that would be there has to be some level of political maturity in the role that we play, regardless of opposition or government. I want to thank the government for taking some of our initiatives the previous government initiated, which some of those members on that side now were once there. So it's not totally independent of brand new members. So I think it's just mature politics. I mean, I think that everybody campaigned on immigration reform, even though it's so funny because I remember when I put up the immigration reform sign.
That was there at the roundabout too.
Yes.
I saw that one. I was going to mention that.
Interestingly enough, I almost lost my cabinet seat as a result of that sign.
Really?
A lot of people don't know that. I was accused of, you don't want to stay in line, and how can you do that? You're making the government look bad and everything else. And it was because at the time...
Well, you did come out with, pushing the notion way before your government as a group agreed that it was necessary.
Sometimes you got to push the envelope.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to say that it's now the biggest issue in the country. When I was trying to fight for it earlier, a lot of people, we didn't get as much momentum. But the fact is we're here now, so I'm happy about that. Mm-hmm. I think we're still waiting to see the finer details of what it means, and I'm happy to talk about that in the future once the government actually announce it. I really am praying for the minister, wishing him well, because this is one of those things you want, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, the minister and the government to be successful on, because immigration has 2 parts, in my humble opinion: focus on Caymanian protection by way of economic opportunities and culture and preservation of identity, and then the labor component, which is the work-related opportunities for Caymanians. And this reform, a lot of people think just immigration, but don't know how the reforms is going to affect you. Some people see it from a working perspective. Some people think of it from a cultural and preservation as Caymanians' identity perspective. So waiting to see what they're going to do there. In respect to the airport, it was always envisioned that the airport would have taken past the last administration. And I know some people are talking about concerns and costing, but if you remember 2 years ago, we changed the fee structure specifically for the long-term planning and redevelopment of the airport, so they can have the necessary funding available to over a very long period of time to fund it. Interesting comments about the runway extension. I have to say that I got to be very mindful that though I was the minister at the time, I'm no longer the minister now. My job is from an effective opposition critiquing perspective, but also as a representative of one area that would be majorly impacted. And I say Georgetown Central, particularly that of Tropical Gardens, Palmdale area, the back end of it that is right adjacent to the runway extension. So I'm mindful I'm also the MP representing the landowners of that area. But I think it is something that is going to help the country from a safety perspective, as well as an economic opportunity perspective from a tourism viewpoint. I know a lot of people are, we don't need much more tourism. Until the day that financial services don't do so well, you'd be surprised how important tourism is. And interestingly enough, the airport runway extension, I think, Mr. Solomon, you mentioned this, the airport runway extension is specifically to stay over tourism.
Right.
When we've just had the major battle for cruise tourism, and I'm not going to go down that road today. I'm past it. I'm done. I think that's why so many people hate me today, is because I fought for something that I think was right. I think one day is going to come, and unfortunately I'm going to say, I told you so, but I don't want to deal with that today.
That day may come sooner than most people would like.
From the numbers of your voters, I would say you're still very much loved.
Yeah, in my constituency.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm so hated in some others, trust me. I mean, not hated. I mean, I just didn't know what you mean, right? You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about politics. All Caymanians, we all love each other together, and sometimes it gets heated even in politics. But it's so interesting because the battle for crews is seeming to be one, and that side says, no, we don't want it. Okay, good. So we're here talking about stayover. So if you don't want crews, let's improve stayover.
And there was that statement. That was the statement that was being made. We shouldn't be pushing about crews. We should be focusing on stayovers.
Yeah. And
no, it's starting.
Now this is a part of stayover. So I'm really just watching and learning myself as a leader, right? So it's not about only stating a position, but understanding human behavior, understanding the makeup of our constituencies. Because I reflected the other day, and I said to another colleague, I won't say the name of the person, I called them up and said, am I missing something here? Because I've always said to myself, I want to be a representative, not a politician. Because a politician does whatever he thinks or she thinks is the best interest for the people, while a representative acts on behalf of the people they're hoping to represent. Mm-hmm. So I have to say, hold on for a minute. Do I think that, the cruise thing is the best thing, but doesn't matter what I think, it's what my majority of people feel. And I start to look across the different constituencies and like, am I missing something here? Is there a higher majority of people who are, I'll use this term very loosely now, right? Because I don't have any other way to describe it, but extreme protectionist for the environment, which is not a bad thing. It comes from a good place, but it can be dangerous if you don't think logically and think from a balanced approach. So I say this, if that is what the majority wants, this is not my obligation to then represent them. So I had to stop for a minute and go, hold on.
But are you getting, not to cut you, Mr. Bryan, but are you getting the same pushback from the eco-activists on the airport expansion project as perhaps you saw very clear and present on the cruise side? Because from where we sit, and we added a new sound effect when we asked the question of airport expansion, in particular, the environmental threats, and we get nothing but crickets. In other words, we haven't heard much fighting and grumbling as it relates to what very clearly will be significant environmental impact.
I heard some. I was there. I was there for the first half an hour, and then I left. I thought the conversation got a little uncomfortable, so I just stepped out. But there's some people who were talking about the turtle grass, and if I can say this, I wanted to call in when you were talking about it, but because there's turtle grass, that doesn't mean turtles frequent the area. So turtle grass go a lot of places, but turtle grass mainly is consumed, and I hope I'm not putting my foot in my mouth here, but turtle grass is all around the island. But there's no turtles laying up by the airport.
You know this for a fact, do you?
As far as I know, that turtles don't lay in rock, and that's all out there, rock and some mangroves. So there's no beachfront out there. So and turtle grass is relative. If I try to go back right to like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and if we had this way or this approach that we are now, God knows we wouldn't have gone anywhere. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have done anything. I mean, think about it for a second. Go to any virgin piece of land right now.
Yep.
If you can go in, you may find a snail, you might find a lizard, you may, like I just left my house and the Cayman parrots are eating up my star apple tree. So there's going to have some sort of ecosystem. And when they talk about environmental impact assessment, isn't the environment everything regardless, no matter what?
Yeah.
So I think we just place such a severe focus on it and have forgotten the thing that our forefathers have created, which is the economic opportunities. Where is the balance? And I don't think that most people are informed enough of what they could potentially benefit from and only thinking about the losses. And that's fair. That's a natural human behavior. I think Christopher Saunders, the honorable member from Bontown West, said those who are certain of their losses while those who are uncertain of their gain, something like that. The term says, but basically, you don't know what you're going to get, but those who are worried about what they're going to lose,
it's certainly there.
And I think the country needs economics 101 lesson. And I think we should all take it, because I'm not sure if a lot of us understand how this country was made. And Alden used to say this as well, which was, the day we stop growing, the day we die. Now, of course, we don't just keep growing at a rate of 7%. And right now we're growing at 4%, which is ridiculous, and it's causing so much other problems. But you have to keep on progressing, even if it's a 0.5% growth or 1% growth, which is reasonable and manageable. But this idea of just stoppage is just mind blowing, and I'm worried, So, but yeah, I'm here from the airport perspective. I really hope that the concerns that those persons who came there and they presented are addressed in a reasonable way. But remembering now, that's a small group of people. Not everybody feels exactly the same way. I think the most part they have to be concerned about is the residents of the area, how this is going to affect them personally. Some people did talk about, why are we pushing for more tourism, where they're going to go and stuff like that. And I think one of the biggest problems with tourism that we have, and this is why you saw the focus on the East-West Arterial Road, is the diversification of the product. It's too concentrated in one area. It's like if you put 20 people in this room, it'd be really crowded, but 20 people in this building is quite comfortable. And because we lack on planning it over the years is why we're having this problem. Like, everybody wants to be at the Stingray City. Everybody wants to be downtown. If you go to Bermuda has such a beautiful spread of the tourism product all over Bermuda, and Bermuda can have the same amount of people as we have on any given day.
But just
never feel it.
But just quickly before we go to the break, I mean, I think we made the point on the radio, I think, when you called in, not only about just increasing numbers, but very important for Cayman product in terms of tourism and specific stayover is the over-reliance that we have on the United States. And being able to diversify that, knowing that you've not put all your eggs in one basket, to me is just critically important. How much time do we have, Mr. Harris?
Well, we only have 30 seconds left, and if I can just add, that being said, certainly growing our product, investing in our infrastructure, making sure that it's up to standard is very important, but we also have to be mindful of costs. Unlike the cruise proposal, which would see perhaps the cruise industry paying for any infrastructure upgrades, on the airport expansion side, that's going to be the taxpayer. And that is a fact that we want to touch on when we come back, taking a look at, does it make economic sense? Keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk still to come next on Bobo 103.1 FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
The Cayman Turtle Center's Turtle Crawl 5K is back, Sunday, June 8th, starting from the Cayman Turtle Center at 6:30 a.m. Registration is $25 CI and includes a race shirt and a goodie bag. All funds raised will support conservation of green sea turtles in the Cayman Islands. Corporate discounts are available by emailing info@turtle.ky. Register now for the Turtle Crawl 5K at turtlecrawl.ky. Proudly sponsored by Stingray Media, Double M Distribution, Health City, and Gatorade.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. Powered by Health Services Authority. Committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM on your radio dial and simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook with our distinguished guest in studios, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, having a discussion on the airport expansion project. Prior to the break and trying to get into perhaps, I think, the more poignant issues relevant to this proposal, Obviously, the environment being one aspect of it, but the other, perhaps more glaring, is the costing aspect. And as we stated prior to the break, unlike the previous proposal, which saw us discussing the expansion of necessary cruise berthing infrastructure, which, whilst we still hadn't priced that model or any new model, it was always understood that the financing for that model would come by way of the cruise industry paying for that necessary infrastructure upgrade. As you stated, the referendum has spoken. We clearly do not want that investment as a people, so we move past it on to the next. The airport expansion project, if we take it in view of its grandiose nature, and we've read about it, articles have been written about it. Certainly whenever we roll out projects, we want to say, well, we could have just what is needed, or we can have really what we need in the long term. And the difference between one and the next are significant millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, which the taxpayer is going to have to basically fund themselves. We're going to have to borrow that money if we are going to invest in those various infrastructure upgrades. And clearly, we have to be cognizant of cost. You mentioned earlier saying there are some folks who are a little worried about the cost. Well, in all transparency, we are some of those folks. We've spent a great deal of time talking about how much this project could potentially cost, and that is perhaps why the government, both this administration, arguably administrations before, have taken it in small bite-sized pieces because they recognize the restrictive nature of the necessary infrastructure upgrades against the cost of it. Before I get into individual pieces of this airport expansion project, your thoughts on the cost aspect and the burden of paying for these upgrades falling squarely on the taxpayer.
But if I could just jump in before you answer, because I think this supplements what my colleague has said. You mentioned something that I didn't hear before, even though I think you mentioned it in a way that inferred that we heard about it, and that was that there were additional costs that was increased to persons who are visiting the country via the airlines.
Yes.
So, and you said that was intentionally done to, amongst other things, to help fund.
Yes, the fees were increased with the intention over time that you would be able to do the necessary things for the improvement to the airport. That's how you raise the money. The revenue that will be paying for the airport doesn't come from core government. It comes from the authority and the fees it charges the airlines, the parking fees, the plane parking fees, the government fees for on each ticket, all of these other things.
Do you remember, and I know I'm probably stretching you now, but do you remember off the top of your head how much the fee increase was?
No. But the modeling was done based on overtime loans. So there would be a loan from the authority, but the authority would be able to pay it based on the per head. Bearing in mind, the Airports Authority is one of the authorities other than SEMA that actually makes money. Right? So the Airports Authority was making a lot of money until COVID hit, and then it kind of went a little bit red. Because of the fact that there was government's policy to continue to pay the workers and so forth. So they had to borrow some money from core government. But besides that, they make a profit. So based on the fees and everything else. But I'll say this, that though it's what can be perceived as a very expensive infrastructure investment, modern societies are valuable and attractive based on the infrastructure that they have in their jurisdiction. You ask yourself the question, look at London. London is a very little small, or the UK for that fact, very, very small. Why is it so valuable? Why is it so strong outside of the political strength? But I think that we should stop being afraid of investing in infrastructure. Infrastructure makes you the difference between you in a rundown third world country. Now, I know that that can be easily taken out of context. It still boils down to the fact is how you're going to pay for it. And the fact is that when I take get on a plane, I'm paying for it. But the truth is, if you get on a plane today as a Caymanian, you're going to pay those fees regardless. You have one of the better airports across the region from a Caribbean jurisdiction perspective, and we should be quite happy with what we have. So you're paying for the limo service that you use. They've got some airports that I've been through in the Caribbean that look like coming out of a garage, to be honest with you. And the fees that they pay in those jurisdictions are a lot more than what we pay. So if you would do a comparison analysis of other jurisdictions, Cayman fees are actually lower. And I think that the model that was created would be over time. And I'm quite sure that Mr. Albert and the good chairman of Airports Authority can quite happily call in or come into your amazing show and explain the financial modeling of how we intended to do it over a 50-year period. So this isn't just, oh, you need to come up with all the money right now. And it would be independent of core government. Even though there's authorities have liabilities on the government books, but they have a model fee structure that they can pay it back themselves.
So you said the government strategically increased the airport fees with a forward-looking viewpoint that they would be used to pay for some of these infrastructure expansions over time. But my question is that something that was, again, based on future growth, or did they, when they increased the fees, also created either an escrow account or a slush fund or otherwise where these additional revenues are being perhaps added up in provision for future development? Because, there are two very distinct things.
Good question. And I don't think I have the answer for you right now. I'm happy to look it up or go back into the files, even though I don't have all the...
You don't have all your files,
Mr. All ministry information, but that should be quite easily asked. But yes, the thinking of those fees is that over time and over growth in numbers, because there are projections for the growth in respect to not only our local population, which is a drop in the bucket, but our tourism numbers. Mm-hmm. So the people actually who are going to be paying for the airport isn't actually us. Right. It's actually our tourists.
Indeed.
That come and it will be paying for that.
But you gave the example of London and the infrastructure that we expect and see with our eyes in London versus the Cayman Islands. And, of course, the obvious glaring difference is London is a major transnational global hub of travel, globally. The Cayman Islands is not. But obviously also, I would assume that because, the airport is a business and running an airport is a business and it is a revenue source for any jurisdiction. Cayman is no different. But I would assume that we would be making infrastructure and development decisions based on evidence for demand. And, that is both in terms of, is there real demand for extending the runway, potentially destroying 22 acres of marine habitat in the interest that bigger planes will fly into this jurisdiction from other markets that we perhaps don't have taking advantage of now. Right now, 97% of all our tourism travel comes from the United States.
How much?
97%.
No, that's not factual.
No?
No. I apologize. Not that it,
tell us. You were former minister.
80% of our tourism comes from the United States market. 6% comes from Canada, and the rest of it is across the UK and Europe.
Okay.
Right? So, and depending on the quarter or depending on the year, it can vary. Particularly like right now, Canada's dollar value isn't so strong, so we're having challenges with the percentages in Canada.
Right.
Because whenever their money value goes down, it's harder for their passengers to go to expensive jurisdictions. And Cayman is considered one of that. But the point is, the U.S. market, the further away the visitor comes from, the higher chance they're going to be on a bigger plane that takes longer routes. So we want to go into the South American market, which we are reasonably within range for the runway that we have now. But the European and Asian markets, we're out of it altogether. And there's so much growth and opportunity, like say, for instance, in Africa. In the next 50 years, Africa is going to be the it place globally with the growth of their GDP and their economies. That's just the projections for the future where the money is going to be at. So if we want to stay relevant, we have been successful due to our close proximity to the United States. And I'm not suggesting the United States is going to go down anytime soon, but you just don't want all your eggs in one basket. That's the main principle I think we should focus on.
Sure.
Only if for whatever reason United States tomorrow say, you know what, we ain't allowing flights out, we are in trouble, big time. So I think that's the main focus that we have there. And I think that the truth is the area that will be reclaimed for a positive benefit for the country is what I consider to be a reasonable sacrifice. Now, whether or not the country wants to spend that money, when I say the country, not the core government taxpayers, but those persons who are in charge of the airport authority, because again, those fees are going to be borne by the 500,000 passengers who come to the Cayman Islands on vacation. That's where the money is going to come from to pay for that infrastructure over a 25 to 50 year period. Now, that's only one part. The airport redevelopment itself, which is the building, then you have the private jet location, you have the apron, thank you very much, you have the runway, then you got expansions to Charles
International Airport
in Cayman Brac, and then you got Little Cayman, which is too controversial for me even to talk about. Right. They do it either way if they want to keep it the way it is. I don't think it's worth the political fight anymore, because every time you say something new in the best interest of not only infrastructure benefits, but from a regulatory perspective, we've been on a license to fly Cayman Airways for like 10 years now, right? Don't even have a legal right to fly into Little Cayman, and a special license has been given. And
well, that is true of all three airports. In fact, there are regulatory concerns in all three airports that clearly very much need to be addressed. Otherwise, we really run the risk of having either one of these facilities shut down, which I don't dare talk about what kind of implications that would have on their economy. But speaking generally, like any other infrastructure investment on the government side, shouldn't we be asking ourselves what we're trying to achieve before we head down this road? Because that's how we spend more money. I mean, we talk about, attracting more visitors from the European market, when 80% of our existing market comes from the U.S., anywhere from 10 to maybe 15 may come from the European market. But when we look at the trends associated with the European traveler, for example, they tend to, gravitate towards the budget or economy destination, France, Jamaica, Barbados, Cuba, for example, not the high-end destinations, high-price destinations that the Cayman Islands have been known for. And I guess my question in this is, are we operating from a methodology of build it and they will come, or build it because we know they're going to come, because we have, agreements in principle, or, some form of documented evidence from this carrier or that carrier that says, well, like the cruise lines, we will come and we'll bring our bigger ships, but we won't do it without cruise infrastructure. Are we getting that same sort of indication from those markets, whether they be South or Central America, whether they be Europe? That's my question.
Yes. The simple answer is yes. There is those indications. And you got to also think it's not only tourism, it's our financial services too, right? A lot of our investment comes from Europe. And one of the attractive parts is not only the registration of companies and businesses and so forth, that we make money from the financial financial services sector, but we're also a very important investment location. You'll be surprised how much revenue we make off of the fees of private jets parked off in the Cayman Islands. We sometimes, I think, we forget what Cayman is. It's a little island of paradise where the rich people go and register their companies, and the $100 million homes that we, the average voter, forget that actually exists. Sometimes, I would encourage my people to do, take some drive down some roads you've never said, well, just go on Google Maps and say, I've never been down here before. Let me go take a look down here. And you see how much money is in the Cayman Islands. And you ask yourself the question, maybe it might be kind of counterproductive because it's putting us in such a high price market. It's affecting the housing market and
price of land, etc.
Price of land and so forth. But we have built an economy which we're not complaining about, but are having difficulties with today But that's who we have become.
I have a question to ask you. I mean, first of all, we appreciate you answering all these questions, but we do have a new Minister of Tourism, and a question that's lurking in the back of my mind is the fact that the authority now has made this announcement. I mean, are we to infer from this announcement that the minister has instructed them to do so and that they intend to, he wants to see the project go forward, or is this just kind of the authority on its own making an initiative? Because you understand my point. I think it's an interesting thing. One would have at least thought that there would be sort of a briefing and things going to sort of strategic pause until we get something from the minister.
Good point. Good question. I see where you're going with that. Well, one would have to assume, I'm not going to speak for the minister. I think it's time for him to get out and start talking about things that are active under his area of responsibility, and be able to answer some of these questions. That's the job of a minister, so you need to do it. But as the government...
And sorry, if you don't mind me interrupting, I can say that, and again, I feel compelled to ask that because we've also seen the government saying that they might have issues with certain projects. They mentioned, for example, in, say, Cayman Brac, right? And I think it would be most unfortunate if it's a case that the authorities just move forward in terms of the announcement, et cetera, of this project, when in fact the government feels that maybe it shouldn't be going forward. And it's just...
Well, you see, here's the thing. The airport is under an authority. It's not core government. So it has a level of independence in its own right. So I think I'd be factual about that. Now, the government can say, listen, we don't want the authority to go down that route, and the minister can speak to the board. The board can then give a directive to the CIA.
And that's why the government appoints the board member.
Correct. So this is actually a board running the airport, not the minister himself. But at the end of the day, I think it is something that he should have a viewpoint on. It's a brand new government. But I have to be honest about everything. As far as I am aware, ports, airports, and seaport will now fall under a new minister. It hasn't been transferred yet. I'm fully aware of that because you have to allocate monies and all that. The budgets for this one will have to go over here. But I understand the Honorable J.E. Banks
will get transport.
Will get transport, which ports will fall under. I stand to be correct because it hasn't been formalized yet.
Right.
But that's what I've been made to understand. So technically speaking, I'm not sure if the new Minister for Tourism will actually have any say about where the airport is going. I think that board now reports.
Sure.
The Airports Authority now reports to the new minister, which would be J.E. Banks.
And you may very well be right, and my question remains the same regardless, because it's simply a case of the governments appoint the boards, and in straightforwardness, you appoint the boards amongst other things to control the direction that those authorities are going to go.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so if you now have the board moving forward with this, one are left to make draw certain inferences, right?
Yes.
So I'm saying, do you have any information otherwise? Because I'm going to infer that most likely now, the fact that they're doing this, whoever the minister is that responsible obviously doesn't have an issue with it.
I would agree with that. I make that same assumption. There's no reason to believe that the government is not in support of the airport expansion. They haven't said so. Are they being strategically quiet just to see what's going to happen as a result of public consultation? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that the minister who is now in charge was also in support of the airport. Matter of fact, him and I were talking about the importance of the safety from airport longevity perspective, particularly with Cayman Airways. God forbid, when they had that incident a couple months back, the flaps didn't come down, the plane would have gone into the water.
Right.
And I remember him saying, this is even another reason for it. So I'm of the view that Honorable J.E. Banks is in support of that. He can say otherwise, but the part about the tourism component is still relevant because the airport is the main. We don't make that airport. The little Mono Caymanians, that only 85,000 people who reside here.
Yeah.
85,000 people don't travel enough to justify the airport. It's 500,000 people who come in and out of this country every year that makes us have an airport there. So the tourism component is still relevant. There's a reason why airport and seaport used to be under with the Minister of Tourism. I didn't think it's a good idea that they separated them, but I'm not a part of the government. There was a reason why traditionally they stick together because their synergies there amongst them. So I don't know how they're going to go about that.
Before we got to go off to a break, you did call in the program, and I think one of your responses to this question was, is your flea is to bite you the hardest, but the chairperson of the board, the chairman, was appointed by yourself as the minister at the time, and we're understanding that he was, preventing you from speaking at the meeting. I find that to be odd. How do you respond to that?
The chairman will have to live with it himself. People know who the chairman is, and I'm saddened that occurred. I tell you what, it took the Lord to keep me together from responding, because at the end of the day, regardless of my position, I'm still a Caymanian, I'm still a voter, I have the right to ask. But I think he's just being mischievous, as he's capable of. I'm sad that he took that, knowing the fact that, I was the one that appointed him there, I gave him the opportunity. He's a capable person. I'm not going to undermine him in any capacity of that. I'm disappointed, but he lived with himself. Everybody else saw his tweet.
Yeah, just for clarity, I say this, not just because you would have been the minister that appointed him, not just because you are a member of the opposition at this point in time, but really any Caymanian. I would like to see what is it that person is saying that somebody feels the need to prevent them from having a say.
Yeah, it wasn't only me. It was myself, the Honorable Roy Tatum as well. Other members were there asking questions. I think it was highly inappropriate, but I'm not going to take away the great value of the good people of this country talking about him. We got so many other issues to talk about. For those who are listening, before we go to the break, I want to encourage, I know a lot of you are following. I sent out the message earlier, particularly in Georgetown Central. Please like and share the video if you're watching via YouTube or via Facebook. I really want to strengthen this show tremendously, because I intend to be here once a week, every week moving forward. Once I have an arrangement of some sort, I think it's important that this communication builds. This show needs to be a show that is necessary for communication and information for the country. So please like and share if you're listening right now. If you find the content important, I'd really appreciate it. So I'm not going to make Johan take over our show.
Well, thank you for that endorsement in the first instance, and obviously encouraging your friends and followers to like and follow our page. We certainly do appreciate it. We do try to bring something different to the table of discussion other than what we're presently receiving. And again, our grateful thanks on behalf of my colleague and I. But going back to the project itself, and certainly to your point, that whilst it's being led by the Cayman Islands Airport Authority, a statutory authority, so a government-owned company, they have a degree of independence, but they're not entirely autonomous from government, least of all with the expenditure. But when we look at the proposed airport expansion project, specifically from the outline business case, and that was published in June 2023, whether we're talking about Owen Roberts or we're talking about, Little Cayman, Edward Bodden Airfield, there are a number of different options that have been presented to this overall expansion.
Correct.
For example, the General Aviation Terminal, the proposal's number 6. You got 6 different options. Mm-hmm. Owen Roberts, you got 5 different options. Charles Conley, you got 5. Little Cayman, you got 5. Mm. So, and it goes from doing what is absolutely necessary to perhaps going all the way to what may be defined as the preferred or gold-plated option. Now, I add gold-plated because that's what we do. We start off with an intended need, i.e. answering the question, what are we trying to achieve as a country? But somehow we get lost between where we start and where we end. And I think of things like the schools project, the Clifton Hunter project, even the expansion that occurred of the Owen Roberts International Airport as it presently exists now. We go a little crazy when we start saying, well, this is what we need. And then we have to ask ourselves, and you're in the opposition now, so I remind you, we have to think with our dollar hat on and not necessarily our vanity hat.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you a little bit on the vanity component. Now,
Please
I
do.
do agree that, government projects get out of control. Historically, we've seen so many examples of it. But the options that you see in that report, you're making the assumption that the first option is the bare minimum that meets the requirements. The options are not listed in that capacity. What I mean by that is one option may not meet the intended outcome. This is just options you have. Like, say, for instance, there's a do-nothing option. But doing nothing option doesn't fix your intended focus. So what is the focus of the airport? And the airport is has to be a master plan has to be updated every, I think it's 6 to 8 years. One has to be done in respect to projections where we are in the future. You got to continue to grow and plan for your future. If you're running a company and you're not thinking 10 years down the line, you're going to be out of business. So the airport does the same thing. So where do we need to be in 50 years? And that's how you do an updated plan. So in that plan, you'll see, okay, then, well, this is what our projections are, where we're going to be in 50 years. What are we going to need to do to compete and be efficient and be a functioning airport? So, and then you have the other parts of, well, we need some safety issues that need to be resolved. So they come and they present all of this stuff to the minister and then to the government. Here's your options. You don't have to do anything. You can just make the business run to the ground, or you can do a little bit that you can afford, or if you want to go ahead and go deeper into that, you can get the fancy, dancy stuff. Like you said, the gold plate and stuff. But don't think that the first option is like saying that, okay, this you can do the bare minimum. The truth is, the government can do nothing with everything if they want to, but there is going to be consequences for that. So some of the things, the only thing that is in there that one would say, okay, is obligatory and necessary by law is the safety regulatory matters. So the general aviation, we can still continue to leave them where they are right now, which is right across from where Cayman Airways headquarters are. But you're running out of space. You're not planning for growth. You're not planning for offering. The truth is, there's like a little small restaurant area we offer services to general aviation billionaires who come in and so forth, and it's just one fence in between. It's not the luxury that a Cayman is expected to, but if you don't want to do that, fine. If you don't want to do the runway, fine. But you still need to do the regulatory elements that has safety issues. So, but eventually, over time, you're going to find yourself quite similarly not keeping up to the mark. So we are willing to make the necessary changes in financial services, the amendments, the adjustments. But when it comes to tourism and infrastructure, we're not willing to do that. And I can promise you, you can choose that route, but eventually you will not be the standard that is expected. Of course, you don't do it if you don't have the money to do it. But there's a money model that was created in these projects that are going to be funded by the taxes that is paid by the 500,000 visitors and the projection for the next 10 to 15 years of increase in persons, whether we get to 600, 700,000 stayover passengers per year. So,
all right. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Bryan. Certainly do appreciate it. When we come back, I'm going to challenge those remarks by reading directly from the outline business case in terms of what the options do present. But we do have to pause, check in with the BBC News. Keep it locked. Kenneth Bryan continues with Straight Talk next.
Bobo.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation. OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
First, the news.
Hello, I'm Govinda Gill with the BBC News. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said he expects President Trump to take strong steps and impose further sanctions after a second round of direct talks between Ukraine and Russia in Turkey failed to result in a ceasefire.
Right now, we're hoping he will support sanctions and force Putin to stop the war, at least to move forward the first stage of ending it, which is a ceasefire. These are important things. I believe that with the position and influence of the United States, we can achieve this more quickly.
At the meeting in Istanbul, Moscow presented a list of demands known to be unacceptable to Kyiv. According to Russian state media, these require Ukrainian troops to withdraw from 4 regions that Russia partly or largely occupies. The UN Human Rights Chief, Volker Turk, has denounced the new American and Israeli-run aid delivery system in southern Gaza, saying it's heartbreaking and shows utter disregard for civilians. He said Palestinians who'd been desperate for food and medicine for almost 3 months were being made to run for the aid in desperate circumstances. He said the UN had raised the issue of ethnic cleansing with Israel.
We have been, on many occasions, writing to the Israeli authorities. Unfortunately, Israel does not have official relationships with us, which is part of a problem. I wish they had, because we could have more behind-the-scenes discussions about what we are seeing. But yes, we confront them with the various things that we see. We always, whenever we issue a report, we send it to them for comments. And in some instances, they comment back. In other instances, they don't.
The Microsoft founder says improving the health and education of people in Africa will be the priority when he gives away most of his $200 billion fortune over the next 20 years. Bill Gates has urged African leaders to innovate and seek a path to prosperity. He announced last month he had no intention of dying rich. An Egyptian national accused of trying to set fire to members of a Jewish campaign group in the U.S. state of Colorado has appeared in court. Mohammed Solomon faces a hate crime charge and 16 counts of attempted murder. Peter Bowes reports.
According to court documents, Mohammed Solomon told investigators he wanted to kill all Zionist people and had planned the attack for a year. The FBI said he'd shouted "Free Palestine" during the attack. At a news conference, the acting U.S. Attorney for Colorado, J. Bishop Gruel, said the Egyptian national threw Molotov cocktails at a group of people, some in their 80s, who were marching in support of Israeli hostages in Gaza. In addition to the attempted murder charges, Mohammed Solomon faces 2 counts of using an incendiary device and 16 of attempted use.
World News from the BBC. The army in Mali says it's repelled what it called an infiltration attempt by terrorist fighters at the Timbuktu military camp in the north. The military said the situation was under control and 13 militants had been killed and weapons and vehicles seized. It did not say who committed the attack, but a group linked to Al-Qaeda called JNIM earlier said it was responsible. The Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, says he will call for a parliamentary vote of confidence in his coalition government after his ally, Rafał Trzaskowski, narrowly failed to win the presidency. Sunday's election was won by the Conservative historian Karol Nawrocki, who is supported by the opposition Law and Justice Party. The artificial intelligence pioneer Demis Hassabis has called for greater international cooperation on AI regulation, though he warned it remains difficult amid current geopolitical tensions. Mr. Hassabis, who's the head of Google's DeepMind, said AI's rapid integration raises major ethical concerns, including misinformation, the impact on employment and loss of control. New computer simulations suggest the Milky Way may avoid a catastrophic collision with the larger Andromeda galaxy. Temesgen Demesky reports.
In the past, scientists had predicted that the 2 galaxies hurtling towards each other at 100 kilometers per second would collide in 4.5 billion years. They'd warned such an event could destroy our solar system, with Earth and the Sun possibly drawn into a supermassive black hole at the center of the newly combined galaxy's center. The researchers now believe this probably won't happen, having used telescopes and computer simulations of our universe's future. How much this all would matter, however, might be up for debate. The sun is expected to make Earth inhospitable to life in around 1 billion years due to solar heating.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, as we continue our discussion with our guest, the distinguished Deputy Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, talking at least for the better part of an hour on the subject of airport expansion. But we also have other questions as it relate to the political landscape and what we might expect going forward from our leaders. I just want to very quickly, Mr. Bryan, address certainly the comments in terms of what is contained specifically in the outline business case for the airport's expansion project, which covers all 4 major projects. And there is very clearly, as I've said before, more than one option being proposed, and it is for the government to tell us which of those options we will move forward with. Certainly, you can take the Cayman Islands Airports Authority's viewpoint, the chairman of the board and their viewpoint for the preferred options, or we can focus on the things that we absolutely need. But just quoting directly from the document, just as an example, page 13 of the outline business case says, Project A2, Owen Roberts International Airport, Option 1, status quo, do nothing, business as usual. Option 2, do minimum, which includes minimal upgrades, no expansion to the current airside and landside infrastructure to cater for limited growth in aircraft movements and passengers. Option 3, moderate upgrades and expansion to current airside and landside infrastructure to cater to moderate growth in aircraft movements and passengers. Or options 4, upgrade and expansion to current airside and landside to cater for what we forecast, obviously the Cayman Islands Airports Authority otherwise, forecast as growth in aircraft movements and passengers. Or option 5, upgrades and expansion to current and landside infrastructure to cater for growth that exceeds forecasts. So clearly we have, the minimum and the maximum that we can choose from. And as we choose in these various options, obviously incrementally, as we go up, we're spending a great deal more, is the point that I was simply making from the list of options. But there are regulatory needs, and there are arguably other infrastructure development that perhaps may be something we could be more forward thinking on. I just want to address very quickly your point that you made it, because it was an absolutely correct point, just to make the argument. When we look at the general aviation terminal, it is very clear to see that the apron, which is the area in which aircraft are parked, needs improving. We have seen, whether it be at Christmas time or major holidays, a great deal more private aircraft are flying into this country than they previously did.
Correct.
More people are flying in on private aircraft, and arguably they're flying in on commercial airlines, particularly those high net worth individuals that feed some of our 5-star hotel properties and more in this country. So to your point, if we need to do an expansion based on current and arguably moderate long-term goals, then we need to expand the footprint so we can stack more planes coming into this country. The other reality is much like the discussion on the port side, the general aviation private aircraft apron also doubles as the main access point for cargo operations coming in and out of this country.
Correct.
And like cruise, as we said, cruise cannot operate with cargo on the same footprint without there being confusion and, of course, inefficiencies. Likewise, the same argument, mirror argument, is being made on the airport side. So in terms of need, That's what we need on general aviation. Do we need to expand the terminal? Do we need to add some of these security upgrades? Maybe, but not today. That's the only point I'm making.
I hope that the same thing that happened to the cargo discussion doesn't happen to the airport discussion, because then I really question where we're going. But to say that you have rightfully acknowledged the cramped services that general aviation and cargo is facing by way of the airport right now. And I think it's time to separate the two, but it also gives, if the general aviation actually moves to where it's projected to be, which is to the eastern side of the current airport, closer to the water, that, the cargo operations via air can expand and we can actually make revenue off of it. But also offer even better opportunities to private aircrafts coming in, which we make a good lot of money off of from the airport perspective. But, these things are going to be subjective, and whether we should have them or not. I don't want it to be, depending on how you look at it, you may say, well, okay, this isn't necessary, or when it's necessary. I'll leave you with this, and we can change the topic after this. I remember somebody said, geez, peace. Moses Colonel just built that airport, and look at it, it's busting at the seams already. You mean to tell me they couldn't build it a little bit bigger? They didn't see that these numbers are coming? And I say that to say this. If you build something too small and too for the immediate future, like within the next 5 years, next 10 years, by the time the 10 years come, they say, well, you mean to tell me now they didn't build something for at least 30 years forward? So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So if you're saying here, okay, I'm going to plan for 50 years down the line, you're saying, well, what are you spending so much money for? And if you plan for 10 years down the line, before you know it, the 10 years come and say, geez, peace, they just built that airport the other day. Because the truth is, they just built the airport the other day. Right? That was 2 administrations ago. And now you go on a certain time of the week, you can't get into the airport. They've had situations where people are outside the line. So if the Honorable former Minister Moses Colonel had built the airport bigger, they would have killed him. They would have killed him politically to say, why are you spending so much money? Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a Ellio. Why are you spending? You know what I mean? So my point, I don't know if my headphones are going up, but I can barely hear myself.
No, you sound great.
It's because this probably has a little bit of a short.
So my point is that, it's going to be relative to the interpretation. And we do have this. You're never going to please everybody, simply put. And, the arguments for it, if the government of the day decides to say it's not important, they can pull it back. We all will have to live with our consequences, live with our decisions. I made some decisions. I decided to say, listen, I think it's important that we talk about the cruise. Maybe that could be one of the reasons why I'm in opposition today. I don't know. And vice versa. If we choose not to go down this road 10 years from now, unless the good Lord comes, we will be there, and there will be, particularly in today's technology, there will be a record where the Honorable Ellio Solomon, the Honorable Austin Harris, Honorable Kenneth Bryan, and I say honorable because we're all honorable men in this room and serve their people well, will have a record of saying, you remember when they were arguing? And then 10 years from now, something will come up and say, hey, we talked about this. So we can do this back and forth. But I would rather, if we can, we got 15 minutes left, remind the public to share and like and listen to the show, because I want this to be a more, I want to be on the show more often, and it's my job to get more listeners to your show, because when I come, I want people listening, and I think you guys are doing a great job. There's a lot of buzz about this show, particularly in the evenings right now. But also, we need to start changing the subject to some things that are not current. And I want to say this, that there's a lot of my good people of Georgetown Central not working. Unemployment is serious and real. And while we are trying to address the immigration problem, which has a connectivity to employment, I think that the government needs to be more strategic right now in getting some people working. And I'm talking about even if that means hand-holding. Because while we try to tighten up immigration, you need to still work with the employers to hire. That's why one of the things that was in the PPM manifesto was to create the NICE program year-round. While people continue to look for work, at least they know they have something they can go ahead and get a job in the meanwhile. Because the truth is, the Department of Financial Assistance not going to look at a 31-year-old man who don't have a job and say, oh, you're an able-bodied person, whether they're going to assist you or not. You'll get a benefit if you're a woman, a single mother, a senior, or somebody that is young. But particularly for males, and males are who are more prone to do something wrong if they cannot survive. I'm worried about the high level of unemployment amongst young men. And I think it's going to have a trickle effect into the negative side if we don't give them work. So I'm really encouraging the government, because I know they will always have somebody to monitor the show. Please, I'm begging you, let's figure out how we're going to get some of our young men, particularly in employment. I don't know what it's like in West Bay. I don't know what it's like in Bontown or East End North Side, but I can tell you in town, we have a lot of young men who are unemployed and they need work. I'm assuming it's the same in West Bay and Bontown and everywhere else. And any Caymanian who is unemployed right now, there's no justification for it. And I want us to do a concerted effort. I think the government should consider if they're in the financial position to do so. And with the first quarter results, with the surplus as much as $26 million more than they projected, I don't think that it would be so bad to take $600,000 and potentially do the NICE program again in the immediate situation to get some people some work. So I know the Honorable Minister Jay, who runs the NICE program, is an advocate for this area. I think there's monies available. They should consider it, because there's a lot of young people who are unemployed. And if we don't deal with that, I'm kind of concerned about it.
Touching on your comments about unemployment, I see here on the chat we had someone saying, good evening, 4 buses have been sold because of no business. Does the Minister of Tourism planning to help people who have lost business, either with jobs that pay at least $3,500 per month, especially the elderly who are unemployable? Now, of course, you are no longer the Minister of Tourism, I will stress, but again, it's someone definitely speaking to the whole issue of unemployment in the country as well.
Well, I project that there's going to be a lot more of that. To be honest with you, I didn't want to bring it up, but I've had much communications with the cruise sector. Obviously, I just left as the minister and have intimate relations. Things are going to progress downhill quite quickly. And I hope the new minister understands the significance of the majority of people in cruise are Caymanian. I talk about born generational Caymanians and many new Caymanians as well. And things are not going to be so cherry over the next 6 months.
Well, if you look at the current schedule for June, there are a grand total of 12 cruise ship visits for the entire month of June, representing a significant decline in weekly visits. So the cruise lines have threatened this for years, and now we're starting to see the proof of those threats starting to take root.
I'll give you a little signal, and I'm going to give you a little bite for the Minister of Tourism. I hope you're listening, my brother, or somebody's listening for you. Go and check the projected schedules before the election for next year compared to what they are now after the election. There are cruise lines who are pulling their calls. I'm giving you a friendly advice, my brother. Things are not going to be nice for cruise. I told you, I tried to convince the country, but the actions are not going to be done in broad daylight. You have to do your homework. You have to go do the research and check for yourself and project what the outcome is going to be. You see the person who made that comment just now on Facebook? There's going to be a whole lot more of them showing up at his doorstep to say, I have no business and I have no way to feed myself. And I hope he has an answer for it.
Just curious on that point, has there been some kind of outreach and stuff by the minister in terms of, maybe, normally there's a little bit of a discussion sometimes and handover and getting a briefing from yourself? Has there been any efforts for that?
No, there has been none. To be honest, I've called him and I offered my assistance to him outright. Politics aside, bro, minister, honorable minister, let me come help you.
Yeah. Or at least tell you what we did and where we're going, and you can decide whether you want to incorporate it or not.
He said that wasn't a good idea. So that's on him.
Wow.
And, love him. He's a Caymanian, and I always remember to love my people. So, but
you might not see continuity in the tourism front. Well, we got some feedback from listeners, and I want to give our listeners, obviously, an opportunity.
Yes, please.
I got 2 questions coming from WhatsApp, 3 if you have the new one that just came in. Well, let's take the first one. Just a quick reminder to our Caymanian people. First of all, thank you to the Honorable Kenneth Bryan for joining the show today. As a quick reminder, Our economy relies heavily on tourism. That means both cruise and air arrivals, as well as the financial sector. Many would agree that work permit income is also a major contributor, and that's a cash-only stream directly into the government hands. The voters said no to cruise tourism, and now there's pushback on extending the runway. Shocker. A move that supports airlift and ensures safety. Meanwhile, leaders in bigger countries like the U.S. can shift policy with the stroke of a pen. Americans don't easily give up vacations, but they will worry about where their money is. Caymanians need to think carefully about the choices that we make that affect our economic future. Speaking of airport expansion, in particular, Owen Roberts, if less than 6% of our air arrival tourism is from Europe and the UK, then why are we wanting to extend our runway? I also heard something about safety. Well, if that's the case, why are we even asking the public? Extend it and keep us safe, period. So on the one hand, clearly someone's suggesting, really, why are we having this public consultation conversation? If it's about safety, let's get it done.
Yeah, we're obligated by law to do that. But some valid points there, and I would love to hear more of those, because only by way of you hearing the public's views can you respond to them appropriately. So what was the first question?
The first question, let me just get there, was if air arrivals coming from Europe and the UK are just 6%, why extend the runway?
Well, they're only 6% because we don't have an extended runway. They could be a whole lot more, particularly because the specialists in the field, particularly those who run operations in marketing, tourism, and airports, have to look, what is the industry going to be like in 20 years? Here's something that's going to be different in 20 years. The types of aircrafts, right? Just like you see the cruise lines trying to go to bigger ships. You think the airlines are not trying to be more efficient and get more money per route? I think that if British Airways, Virgin can say, I can get to the Caribbean, carry more people, and make more profit per flight, they probably would. The other part that is interesting about this that we don't consider, we're at the mercies of Bahamas for European flights right now. If Bahamas want to do some kind of crazy political maneuvering and say, you know what, they're the competition, I want to take them out. All right, British Airways, we only want you flying here. You can't have a connection continuous on to another country. I'm not suggesting they would do that, because my friend Mr. Cooper, who's the Deputy Premier and Minister for Tourism over there, would never do such a thing. He's an amazing guy. But if he wasn't there, things can get crazy. So you're reliant upon other people. And the truth is, the British Airways flight, majority of the front end of the plane, the front end is the VIP, the business class, the first class, where most of the money is made on every flight. They don't make money off of the back end, It's the front end where the money is made, because each one of those seats costs probably about 3 times the cost of one seat in the back, if not more. Most of those front-end seats is what's coming to the Cayman Islands. So they need us just as much as we need them. To be honest with you, Bahamas may find themselves in difficulty if we got the runway extension and they can not stop in Bahamas. So anyway.
Well, 4 minutes remaining. Got another question outside of the airport expansion, but staying on, I guess, tourism. Mr. Austin, Mr. Ellio, welcome to Honorable Kenneth Bryan today. I wonder if he can tell us what is to be of that very attractive piece of property, waterside property across from Kirk's Supermarket. Government bought it. What is going to go there? Maybe government could invest in a nice attraction or something or the other. I believe this was a piece of property acquired under your administration, so you can answer this question directly.
Yeah, quickly. So the intention was for it to be a training location for tourism-related stuff. Many people were getting trained in tourism but not getting the experience. So it's going to be that. We had plans for it, but I maturely decided to say, let's hold back. If we haven't, we had the monies allocated and everything else, but because we're so close to an election, I said, let the plans get to the stage where the plans are completed, and if the next administration wants to move forward, they can. At the very least, the part that was important that I hope they continue, which is, you remember that the Siemens Park, it's supposed to be at a tower building.
Yeah.
The craft market went there. I'm hoping that the craft market would then go, the intention with the craft market to go by the lobster pot next to the location there. So the Siemens Park would go there. And if they want to do nothing, not go forward with the project, it's a beautiful space. Just make it a green space so Caymanians and everybody else can just go out there and watch the ocean like what we always used to do. Just leave it there because government owns it as an asset. You know, land not going to rot, so just keep it until further ado. But I just want to say thank you so much, gentlemen.
Well, before you do so, I was just going to say, certainly we are down to about 3 minutes left in our time today, but I want to thank you for being our guest in studios today. We look forward to having you back with a degree of regularity on the program so we can discuss this and other issues important to you, your constituents, and, of course, the wider Cayman Islands. But with now 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining, an opportunity for some final and closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harris, Mr. Solomon. It's really a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to be on here. I just want to say to the listening audience, if there's something you want to hear from myself and or the other members of opposition, please do message the show. You know, I'm not sure if the government should be coming on the show as well. It seems, I'm not sure if they're only going on to one particular show. I don't know what the story is there, but I think they should make their way here as well. But we are willing to respond to you. So if you have questions and concerns, keep on tuning into the show at 4:30 Monday to Friday. We're going to be here on a regular. We want to speak to you, and this is a way we can do that. So rather than that drive be so boring in traffic on the way home, I'm tuning in here on the show. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on, and I look forward to being here next week with you guys.
We got to get him on the payroll. I love how he just endorses the program the way he does. Thank you very much for that. It means a lot to us. Ellio, I'll allow you to give our vote of thanks.
Okay, well, again, I just want to thank you as well, Mr. Bryan, for coming on the program. I do want to comment a little bit on some of the things that you said, but we're just about out of time. But I can just make a note that, you know, one of those is the whole issue when you talk about, you know, representative in terms of the government. And I think another one was, again, we talked about the chairman and the whole issue about squelching free speech, but I'll have to leave those comments for another day. But I want to thank you very much for coming on the program on short notice, I might add. And like I said, from the beginning of the program, you've always been, not just now, but from the time I know you, in terms of the politics, always out there and making sure that you're representing your people and always sharing the information. As I've said, I've even named that little area Kenneth Bryan's roundabout. and we want to thank you very much for continuing that, and we're wishing you the best of luck. But we want to cover some more about the political landscape and stuff when you come back, find out how you're suiting into the new opposition role and what a little bit of the future holds. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon.
Yes, indeed. And to the listening audience, certainly grateful for you tuning in, and those who chose to engage our guest. We certainly do appreciate it. As always, there's always more questions than we have time for, but it gives us something to look forward to the next time we have the opportunity to have the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, as our guest in studios. That's all the time we have for you for this Monday. But again, as has been stated a few times, tune into Straight Talk every weekday evening, Monday through Friday, from 4:30 to 6:30, right here only on Bobo FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.